What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically back to covering Final Crisis. Now, with that being said, today's video is only going to have Final Crisis number 3. Now, the reason why we're only covering Final Crisis number 3 is, well, let me explain. So right after Final Crisis number 3, you had a lot of tie-ins just drop in. You have Final Crisis Submit, Final Crisis Submit, Resist. You had Final Crisis Superman Beyond. You also had Final Crisis Revelations. Like, you had a lot of different Final Crisis tie-ins that all take place after Final Crisis number 3. Then after all those tie-ins, we then jump back into Final Crisis number 4. Now, I will try my best to cover all those tie-ins because I want to make sure we have a complete playlist of Final Crisis, because Final Crisis is one huge storyline for DC Comics. Even though it was only about 30 issues, it was still a very huge event for DC Comics. And matter of fact, this event is still paying off things right now in the current DC era. Now, with that being said, though, Final Crisis is picking up after the big ending of Final Crisis number 2. And matter of fact, if you did not see that video, I highly recommend go see that video, because at the end of that video, basically, we saw the return of Barry Allen. And that was huge because Barry Allen been dead for over 20 years in our time, in comic book world time. And so it's kind of like, oh my God, he's alive. Where has he been this entire time? But of course, you have Grant Morrison kind of not really giving us a full-on reasoning on how Barry Allen is still alive at this point. Instead, it's Grant Morrison setting up all these different tie-ins, but also setting up things to come in the later half of the main storyline of Final Crisis. And so getting into Final Crisis number 3, basically we pick up with Shade. Now remember, Shade is basically one of the many organizations in DC Comics, but usually they kind of handle the more bizarre things, the things that most other organizations are not going to handle. Now, with that being said, though, right now they're being led by Frankenstein because they're about to do a raid. Now, this raid is being done at the Darkseid Club. Now, the Darkseid Club is actually very important. Let me explain why. Because back in Final Crisis number 1, we had this detective who was basically going around trying to find missing children. But of course, all his clues led to the Darkseid Club. Now, the Darkseid Club was being run by Darkseid. Now remember, before Final Crisis had actually happened, there was a war. And this war took place between New Genesis and also Apocalypse, where most of the new gods had died, but of course they were reborn. Now, with them being reborn, they all took over different people's bodies on Earth. Now, of course, the Darkseid, being a very powerful being, he was unable to kind of stay in one body. And so he has to jump body to body to body. Now, when Dan Turpin found the Darkseid Club, he met Boss Darkseid because Darkseid was running that club. But of course, right after he had met Darkseid, Darkseid had basically left the body he was using to run that club and took over Dan Turpin's body. Now, of course, you do have Shade run into the club, but when they do, they find two people. They find the old dead body of Darkseid's last host and also the Question. Now remember, at this point in DC Comics, the Question was Ray Matoya. And matter of fact, she first appeared back in the Batman animated series. But of course, when DC said, you know what, she was a somewhat popular character in that series, they brought her over to DC Comics. And so ever since then, she has been the Question. Well, really, she became the Question a few years after her first appearance in comics. But either way, though, she is the Question. But she does tell Frankenstein and Shade, you need to find Dan Turpin because he was here last. And if the dead body of Darkseid's last host is here, that basically means that Darkseid has taken over Dan Turpin's body. Now, Renee Matoya was able to basically get away from Shade because, of course, Shade wanted to bring her in, but of course she got away. Now, right after she got away, there was a huge flash that came from the sky and crashed onto the ground. Now, of course, you do have the public kind of surround where the crash happened at to see what in the world just crashed into the ground. And that is the moment we see that there is some kind of hero. And this hero's name, and y'all, I am going to butcher this name really bad, but her name is Uber-Frau-Lin. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly, but most likely, probably not. But basically, she is a hero that just crashed in the middle of the city. And of course, you have everyone wondering what to do with her. Like, how can they help her? And of course, with Renee, she's kind of like, you need to call help for her because she just fell out of the sky. Now, of course, right after she said that, you do have some shade agents being able to catch up to her and say, we're going to bring you in for questioning. And just like that, we literally move on. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with Nix Uton. Now, Nix Uton is actually a monitor, or he was a monitor. Let me explain. So basically, you had monitors watching over the different universes in the DC multiverse. Now, when it came to Nix, his goal was to watch over his Earth and his universe that he was watching over. The problem is, though, his Earth was completely wiped out. And of course, with him watching his Earth get wiped out and basically failing at his job, he was fired as a monitor. But he was given the ability to live a regular human life. Now, of course, when he arrived on Earth in the main DC universe, he got a job at a burger joint. The problem is, though, he just got fired from that job because he was asking every customer, every co-worker questions that kind of relate to his last job being a monitor. And so, of course, his boss said, you're freaking everybody out. You're fired. Get out of here. Now, while he's leaving, well, that is the moment there is a news report. And this news report is about a guy known as Cave Carson. And Cave Carson had basically found carvings in a cave. And these carvings basically show a design to Metron's chair. Now, this is actually very important because Metron was in Final Crisis number 1. And basically, in Final Crisis number 1, Metron gave Anthro, this caveman, all the way back then, the ability to learn how to make fire. And so this is right here, Grant Morrison saying it's all coming together, just a very slow pace. Now, this is the moment where we basically pick up with Jay Garrick. Of course, we all know him as the original Flash. Now, the last time we saw Jay Garrick, he was actually with Wally West as they had just discovered that Barry Allen was not dead. And that took place at the very end of Final Crisis number 2. And so the question is now, how in the world Barry Allen is alive again? And Grant Morrison really does not give us that answer right now. Instead, what you have Jay tell us while he's kind of catching everyone up in the home of Wally West is that when Wally and Jay arrived at that strip club, and of course they found Barry Allen to be alive again, and of course they saw that Barry Allen was chasing a bullet. Now, this bullet is actually very important because this is the bullet that killed Orion. And remember, back in Final Crisis number 1, Orion was the reason why everything kind of set off the events of Final Crisis. But basically, Orion was killed by a Radion bullet, and this Radion bullet is breaking through reality and time. It's traveling through time backwards to basically kill Orion. And so Barry Allen being alive again is trying to basically catch that bullet. Now, you had Jay and you also had Wally kind of try to help Barry to catch that bullet. And so you had all the current Flashes at that point running together to basically catch that bullet to hopefully save Orion in the past. But of course, they're unable to catch the bullet. Now, while they're running, though, you do have Jay basically give up because he's an older man. His legs cannot run like that forever. And so, of course, he had to tap out while Wally West and Barry continue to try to catch the Radion bullet. But as Jay gave up, you had the Black Racer run by Jay. Now, the Black Racer is actually very important because the Black Racer represents death in one of the many ways of DC Comics. You have different ways or different people who basically represents death. And of course, the Black Racer is one of them. But you have the Black Racer really chasing after Barry Allen because Barry should be dead, but Barry's not dead. And so, of course, right now, it's the Black Racer trying to catch Barry while Barry and Wally are trying to catch that bullet. And they're kind of going through reality and time at the same moment. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with Libra and the Human Flame. Now, remember, the way Grant Morrison was writing this story, you would believe that Libra is the main bad guy of this event. But in reality, it's Darkseid. We all know it had to be Darkseid because Darkseid is a more powerful character than Libra. Now, with that being said, though, remember, Libra's main goal right now is to have a perfect balance on Earth between good and evil. Now, with that being said, though, Libra is the guy who has been going around and trying to recruit all these different characters to his side. But of course, to convince these characters to join his side, he had to do something for each and every one of them. And so when it came to the Human Flame, what he did for the Human Flame was kill off the Martian Manhunter, which was really huge. But with the death of the Martian Manhunter, a lot of bad guys began to believe in what Libra was trying to say. Now, with that being said, though, right now we see Libra giving Human Flame some kind of helmet. Now, of course, as soon as the Human Flame puts on this helmet, well, that is the moment we come to find out is holding the AntiLife Equation. And remember, the AntiLife Equation takes away your willpower. You basically follow orders left and right. And of course, with that AntiLife Equation playing in the ears of the Human Flame has completely lost his free will. Now, right after that, you do have Lex appear. Now, remember, Lex Luthor has been that guy who has been challenging Libra, like, I don't trust you and I know I can't trust you. Now, with that being said, though, you do have Libra basically show Lex he has no choice at this point. Because now Libra has more people on his side, and yet all these people surround Lex. And he tells Lex, you have two choices. You can join us or die. Make your choice, Lex. Now, that is the moment where we actually do pick up with Clark Kent, Superman. Now, the last time we saw him was Final Crisis number 2. But here's the problem, though. In Final Crisis 2, he was basically working at the Daily Planet. And while working there, a bomb went off. And when that bomb went off, of course, he survived the explosion, but Lois Lane got hurt. And it was a way for Libra to show that none of these heroes are untouchable. That all of these heroes can basically be grabbed. That these heroes can basically be destroyed. And so you had Libra set off a bomb that basically almost killed Lois Lane. And right now she's in the hospital and it looks like she could possibly die. But that is the moment you have Clark Kent be confronted by some random lady. And this lady is telling Clark, if you come with me, you can save her life and all lives. And so, of course, she's talking about Earth completely. And so, of course, this is going to lead into Superman Beyond, which is written by Grant Morrison. And of course, like I said, I might try my best to actually cover that storyline. Now, we actually do jump over to the Justice League. Now, this is a huge moment because right now we're watching Hal being arrested. Now, remember, Hal Jordan is being arrested because when John Stewart, the other Green Lantern, was basically investigating the scene of the crime where Orion's dead body had crashed at, John was attacked by another Green Lantern. And so the Alpha Lanterns believe it had to be Hal who had attacked John. And so, of course, they're going to take Hal away. Now, with that being said, though, for Wonder Woman, she's kind of like, we're screwed here because most of our team is gone. She's talking about the Justice League to Alan Scott, the original 1940s Green Lantern. And what she's saying is Batman's missing. The Flash is missing. Superman right now is with his dying wife. And our two Green Lanterns, one's in a coma and the other one's being arrested right now. We're literally short-staffed. And so that is the moment you have Alan Scott call up Oracle. Of course, Oracle being Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. Well, she was Batgirl, but now she's Oracle. Now, with that being said, it's Alan Scott saying it's time for us to draft superheroes into our roster because right now we need all hands on deck. That means it's time to do a draft. You have the military draft, and now it's time for a superhero draft. And so that is the moment where you do have Oracle go ahead and call up a lot of different heroes to basically be part of this draft. And you're talking about characters like Green Arrow, Supergirl, Twaki Twani, don't ask, Freddie Freeman, and also the new Aquaman. Yes, the new Aquaman, because the history of Aquaman is going to shock a lot of people, but I am not going to get into that right now. But also like the Justice Society, the Teen Titans, the Outsiders, the Shadow Pack, and other characters as well. It's all hands on deck for this event now. Now that is the moment where we actually do pick up with Mr. Miracle in Tokyo. Now remember, Mr. Miracle is a new god who had died, but he was brought back to life and he now possesses a regular human body. Now with that being said though, right now he's alongside with a Tokyo superhero known as Sunny Sumo. Now Mr. Miracle really went to Sunny Sumo for two reasons. One, to stop evil from winning, but two, because Sunny Sumo is very important for the AntiLife Equation. He is one of the many pieces for the AntiLife Equation. And so it's Mr. Miracle coming to Sunny for those two reasons. Now, of course, Sunny is having a hard time believing Mr. Miracle that evil is about to win. But while they're talking to one another, well, that is the moment they do get attacked by some Justifiers. Now, those characters right there are not honestly that important. But of course, while you have our two heroes trying to fight against the Justifiers, that is the moment you do have the super young team, that's their name, a Tokyo team come in and being able to save Mr. Miracle and Sunny Sumo and get them out of there before any more damages are done. Now that is the moment where we actually do jump over to Wonder Woman. And right now you have her with the Atomic Knights. Now those characters right there are also not important. But basically right now you have Wonder Woman and the Atomic Knights arriving in Bloodhaven. Now when they do arrive in Bloodhaven, because basically there was an incident at the Command D bunker. And matter of fact, that took place back in Final Crisis number 2. But of course, as you have our characters right now kind of walking through this wrecked city, that is the moment she finds a character known as Replica. And Replica is a character who was an agent of Shade, but she's dead now. And the question is though, why? Well, she was killed off by Mary Marvel. Now, Mary Marvel is part of the Shazam family. And so to find Replica dead and to find out that Mary Marvel killed her, that means that Mary Marvel is no longer good. She's now bad. And the question is though, why? Why is she bad? And matter of fact, she has changed her outfit completely. It's a horrible outfit, but she has changed her outfit completely. Now, you do have Mary Marvel and Wonder Woman fight against one another. But while they're fighting against one another, well, that is the moment you do have our hero, Wonder Woman, being able to defeat Mary Marvel. But right after she does that, you have Mary Marvel tell Wonder Woman, hey, you're too late. In 5 minutes, the AntiLife Equation is going to spread around the world. And when it does, it's basically game over. Like what Mary Marvel had told Wonder Woman, the AntiLife Equation will be spread around the world in 5 minutes. And the way they do it is through computers, because you have Oracle and also Mr. Terrific basically find out there is some kind of email, and that email was holding the AntiLife equation. And so the AntiLife equation is now been spread across the world just like that. Bam, people's free will is now completely gone. And of course, that means now everything has just fallen apart for our heroes in literally 5 minutes. Now, we actually do pick up with the flashes, and this is where we are going to end today's video, but we actually do pick up with Wally West and Barry Allen. Now, you do have Wally West and Barry Allen right now in the future, because they were chasing that bullet for so long, and of course they did fail. That bullet was still able to go back in time and kill Orion. But either way though, our flashes have now arrived in the future. Now, Wally West has no idea why Barry's alive again. And honestly, Barry doesn't either. But of course, for Barry, he says the only thing he remembers was dying and then waking up and seeing a bullet that he had to catch to save Orion's life. But of course, they failed. Now, with them being in the future, this gives us a look of what happens in the future with the AntiLife equation basically being out there. And of course, it's bad. The entire world has been taken over, and they are confronted by Wonder Woman, but she's evil. And she even says, superheroes, kill. Basically means in the future, the AntiLife equation got her, and now she goes around killing people. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. Now, the next one we're going to cover Final Crisis Superman Beyond, a tie-in that was written by Grant Morrison. So, of course, it is somewhat important for this event. I'll try my best to cover it because that storyline is crazy. But either way, though, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.